Chapter 27. Minutes ticked by like hours. The route that she planned would take about half an hour to get her to the Devil's Chair, approaching from the south via Manstone Rock. And she planned to get there well before whoever it was who wanted to meet her. Marianne checked her phone again. The silence from Georgie Fraser was hard to comprehend. She had been reluctant to set off on what was possibly an idiotic venture without telling someone where she was going. Why did it have to be the DI? She could have told Donal or Roger. Only she wasn't sure whom she trusted anymore. Donal would be only too happy to accompany her to the Devil's Chair by moonlight, but for reasons which meant she could not even consider asking him. He would think them bound forever. She could call DC Corby, but to say what? It was possible that the note left for her was nothing to do with the murders. If Martin, John, Davis was Anna's boyfriend, he must have known that she was looking for her birth mother, that she was looking for Marianne. Perhaps he wanted to tell her that her daughter had died before she had found her. Or just to tell her how her daughter had died, if it had been by his hand. An accident. If Anna Price was indeed her daughter. Somehow it didn't seem real. She had always thought that she would recognise her child if she saw them. Anna had stayed under her roof for a week 3 years ago. She had found her lifeless in a pool. Neither time had she recognised her. No harm, the note said. It lay there now on the arm of her sofa, the cramped writing spidering its way into her brain. Next to it lay the other one. Is it true you once killed someone? Yes, it was true. But how could Martin Davis possibly have known? Unless Anna had known. Is that why she had held off from coming to find her? She picked up her phone and swiped back to her messages. Found the one she had sent Georgie Fraser with a photo of the note attached. The DS said you're off the case. I'm sorry if that's because of me. Someone, I think Martin Davis, wants to meet me at the Devil's Chair at midnight. I wanted someone to know where I'd gone. Had she sent it because she'd hoped Fraser would forbid her to go? Not hoped. Known. And now she herself must decide. What did she have to lose? Her life. All that she had worked to achieve. Her home. But if she died, none of that would matter. Not to her, anyway. Nothing would matter. Since that night in the sand dunes, she had been unafraid of death. Sometimes life was a greater punishment. The animals would miss her, true, but Effie and Steve Olsen would see they were all right. Anyway, why would Martin Davis want to kill her? She couldn't implicate him in Anna's or Lucy's death. She had seen nothing. And the card she'd found in his room was neither here nor there. The police had already known. DC Corby had said so when she was copying it. As Marianne shrugged into a black hooded sweatshirt, Maggie whined gently from the rug and thumped her tail. Pip, always sensitive to her mood, had been clingy all evening. Now the dog sat, eyes fixed and alert. Either they sensed her anxiety, or that she planned to go out without them. It might be more sensible to take them with her, but they would make it impossible to stay hidden. And she didn't plan to reveal her whereabouts to anyone until she knew who she was meeting. At 11:10, there was still no reply from Georgie Fraser. Marianne left her cottage by the back door in case anyone was watching the front, and clambered up through her garden until she reached the wilderness beyond. As she retraced her steps of the afternoon, once more torn at by brambles and stumbling through bracken, her small rucksack thumped against her back, the weight of her torch reassuring. It was standard police issue, though available to the public, and as useful as a weapon as a light. She'd packed her head torch too, as well as a snack and a flask of coffee, though for now there was enough moon to light her way. After the day's humidity there had been a flash downpour, but the sky was now clear and stars showed through the larch branches above. The rain had made the ground slick, and several times she slipped on leaf litter and fallen larch needles before she reached the fence. Once over the fence and on the footpath, the going was easier. Marianne was aware of the small noises of the night, a breeze that made the branches creak, a rustle here and there in the undergrowth that fringed the path, the occasional baaing of sheep, her own feet on muddy turf. The path climbed more steeply towards its end, and she checked her watch. Just before 11:30. As she came out from the cover of the trees onto the heather and rock-strewn hillside, the darkness became less solid. Once on the ridge, she would need to be careful in this moonlight. With luck, her date would approach the chair from the opposite direction, and she would be in place before they even reached the top of the track from Perkins Beach. As far as Manstone Rock, the highest point on the ridge, the path was smooth enough, short turf winding between rampant heather. Once past the stark outcrop, however, chunks of quartzite colonised the grass track until there was barely room to place a foot between obstacles. In one myth, the devil had been carrying rocks in his apron, like a blacksmith's, Marianne assumed, and when the strings had broken, they had tumbled across the ridge as far as the mortal eye could see. It was treacherous enough in daylight, dangerous at night. Marianne had picked her way through it before in all weathers and knew not to rush. Keeping to the west side of the ridge, moving slowly, hood up and all in black, she should have been indistinguishable from shadow if anyone was already watching from the devil's chair. The moonlight cast its shape in blackness on the ground, and she kept well in its shade. As she neared its mass, she stopped in the lee of a large boulder and crouched low, listening. Nothing. Not even the cry of an owl from the trees below. The grouse that nested in the heather would have gone to roost. As long as she didn't veer off the rocky road, she wouldn't disturb them, and the sheep rarely strayed into the boulder field. From the south side of the Devil's Chair, the cairn wasn't visible, but by climbing around its base towards the west, she found a vantage point from which she could see the path that led up from the direction of Perkins Beach, a thin sliver of silver in the moonlight. She settled herself into a cranny between two tall quartzite pillars, her back pressed against a third. Her own chair beneath the devil's. With 20 minutes to go before her assignation, she took out her flask and savoured a swig of hot coffee. Then she settled again and was still. The figure, when it emerged from her own valley, moved stealthily. It crept on in steady paces until it reached the edge of the boulder field, where it slowed and became more hesitant. She couldn't identify it. A man, she thought, from the way it moved. Not huge like Roger, but not small either. Average. Either Martin Davis or Joe Ingalls would fit the bill, but then so would some of the archaeologists. Riley, perhaps, or maybe even Wiltshire Sam. Her mind flicked back to the notepad she had found in the boy's room. One of the archaeologists might well own a similar notepad, but she could have sworn that the handwriting on her note had been the same as that on the pad. It must be Martin or Joe who wanted to meet her. But that didn't mean that either was the murderer. Every so often, as it picked its way through the rocks, the figure stopped and turned through a full 360 degrees, sweeping the bare hillside in the strange blue light. When it reached the base of the chair, it stopped again, and this time pulled back a sleeve. Not it. Him. Without doubt. In the moonlight, Marianne saw clearly the width of a pale wrist and a chunky watch. Had she ever noticed whether Joe Ingalls or Martin Davis wore one? Sitting tight in her eyrie, she watched for a while as she shifted from foot to foot, looking from left to right, turning again to scan the panorama. Rather than a confident killer waiting for his prey, he seemed anxious. Marianne eased herself free of her hiding place. At the same time, her target seemed to run out of patience. "Hey!" he called, the sound suddenly, shockingly loud, as it ricocheted off the towers of rock into the stillness. "Where are you?" There was no Devon burr. The voice was almost accentless. Martin Davis, then. The note swam before her eyes. "If you want to know what happened to your child, meet me." "Over here!" she shouted, though she stayed well behind her wall of rock. Martin Davis spun round, body taut, staring into what must have seemed to him an impenetrable mass of quartzite. "Where are you?" he called again, something close to panic in his voice. "Stop messing around, it's not funny!" Did he believe the legends about the devil's chair? Marianne took the torch from her backpack, tucked it into her belt and pushed the hood back from her head. Silently she inched out of the cleft in the rocks and picked her way through to the north side of the chair beneath the cairn, where he could see her. "Who's messing around?" she said. "You were the one who asked to meet." She felt no fear. Here in this mass of wild desolation, he looked small and vulnerable. He might have killed 2 lovely young women, or he might not. For now he looked like a lost little boy. As she stepped into the moonlight, he stumbled. "What the hell are you doing here?" For a moment Marianne was taken aback. "It's midnight, so here I am." "But what—" "You left a note." Martin, John, shook his head. "No, I—" "So what are you doing here? Who were you calling to?" Marianne advanced a little further. She weighed the torch in her hand, held it down by her side to conceal it. "I was just—" He shook his head again. "I was out for a walk." "No, you're waiting for someone. Who?" Unease was creeping over her. Was this some sort of set-up? Had someone lured both of them up to the chair? "It's none of your business." He stepped a little back from her. "What are you doing up here anyway? Or do you wander about at night like that crazy Joe?" Marianne thought it was very much her business. 2 people have died, one on my premises. I know you're not who you say you are. I know your name is John Davis. I know you knew Anna Price. And the police know too. Surely if he had killed Anna, it had been an accident. This wild-eyed, frightened boy wasn't a cold-blooded murderer. But what about Lucy? That had been planned, vicious and horrific. Had something turned him from his nature? His shoulders stiffened, and he ran a hand over his hair, seemed to grow taller. "Have you been snooping in my room?" He took a step towards her, and Marianne held her ground, tightened her grip on the heavy torch. "Did you kill Anna?" she said. "And Lucy? Because if you did, you need to go to the police. They know who you are." "It was Joe," he said. "Wasn't it?" His tone aggressive now. "The police had him in and no one's seen him since. He was out when she went missing and the night Lucy got killed. Probably set this up, didn't he? Messing with our heads." As his fear seemed to ebb, small sparks seeded themselves in her. No way was she letting them get a hold. Instead they flared into anger, filling her with strength, and she advanced towards him, raising her torch, although it was unlit, getting a kick of power as he took a step back. "He's been convenient for you, hasn't he?" she said, suddenly sure that Joe Ingalls, with his strange eyes and sea-formed accent, was as innocent as she was, at least of this crime. "You made sure you put him in the frame right from the beginning, didn't you? Talking him into being your alibi, undermining him with the other guests. And you might have killed Anna by accident, but what you did to Lucy was—" "I didn't kill anyone!" he screamed, as though the words were ripped from him. "That fucking police sergeant today, digging and poking and trying to intimidate me. Why would I kill Anna? I loved her." His voice broke and he began to cry, angry and verging on hysterical. "Why does she even need to come here? Chasing some fucking dream. She didn't need a birth mother. She had me. I was her family. I should have been enough for her. And then she booked this place. She was going to spring it on you, thinking you'd welcome her with open arms. If you'd ever given a shit about her, you wouldn't have abandoned her, would you? Why would you care now?" Marianne felt sweat gather in her armpits, a shiver tracking all down her spine. "Is that what happened? Did you try to stop her? Run after her? If you killed her by accident—" "I told you I didn't kill her!" Another scream from somewhere deep in his belly. It echoed around the ridge, bouncing off the many facets of rock and stone, reverberating through the clear, still air. Into the silence that followed came another noise. Both heard it and froze. A thud and a scuffle somewhere over towards the track to Perkins Beach. Then a shout, a man's voice, and another yell, higher pitched. Marianne's head was buzzing. Martin, John Davis, turned. "What the hell?"